Welcome to AZ-802 Practice Exam, Windows Server Security Deep Dive, Set 8. This focus session includes 40 original questions on exploit protection, application control for Windows, Credential Guard, Microsoft Defender SmartScreen, group policy security, OSConfig baselines, Windows LAPS, Defender for servers, Windows Firewall, password protection, protected accounts, domain controller hardening, delegation, authentication policies, and authentication policy silos. I will read each Windows Server security scenario and the answer choices. After the choices, you will hear, "Lock in your answer." Then the video pauses for a silent 3-second countdown. Pause the video if you need more time. After the countdown, I will reveal the correct answer, explain the deciding protection, policy, identity, delegation, or authentication boundary, and share one exam clue you can transfer to another scenario. Question 1 of 40. An engineer must protect a set of Windows Server 2022 file servers against common memory-based exploits, while ensuring that existing antivirus scanning and attack surface reduction rules continue to operate independently. The requirement is to apply the mitigation settings centrally without creating per-server XML files or altering Defender antivirus policy. Which action meets the requirement? Option A. Configure the mitigations in a group policy object under Computer Configuration, Administrative Templates, Windows Components, Windows Defender Exploit Guard. Option B. Create an Intune device configuration profile that deploys an exploit protection XML file and assign it to the server group. Option C. Enable the mitigations in the local security policy editor on each server and export the settings as a baseline. Option D. Add the servers to a Microsoft Defender for Endpoint attack surface reduction policy that includes the exploit mitigations. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is A. Configure the mitigations in a group policy object under Computer Configuration, Administrative Templates, Windows Components, Windows Defender Exploit Guard. Exploit protection settings are deployed via group policy under the Windows Defender Exploit Guard node, or via Intune configuration profiles. They are distinct from both antivirus scanning and ASR rules. The phrase existing antivirus scanning and attack surface reduction rules continue to operate independently signals that the correct control is the dedicated exploit protection policy path, not ASR or AV. Question 2 of 40. After an exploit protection policy is applied via GPO to a group of application servers, a line of business executable that previously ran without issue now fails with an access denied error on every launch. The executable is signed and located in a permitted path. Logs show that the mitigation force randomization for images, mandatory ASLR, is active. Which step identifies whether this single mitigation is the root cause without disabling the entire policy? Option A. Temporarily move the executable into an exclusion path defined in the same GPO and observe the result. Option B. Use the exploit protection audit mode on the affected servers and review the resulting event logs for the specific mitigation. Option C. Run the executable under Process Monitor while filtering for ASLR-related registry accesses. Option D. Disable all mitigations in the GPO. Relink a test GPO with only mandatory ASLR enabled, and compare behavior. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is B. Use the exploit protection audit mode on the affected servers and review the resulting event logs for the specific mitigation. Audit mode for exploit protection records which mitigations would have blocked an action without actually enforcing them, allowing isolation of the offending mitigation. The combination of access denied on every launch, plus named mitigation, plus requirement to identify root cause without disabling the policy points to audit mode. Question 3 of 40. A A security architect must ensure that only code signed by a specific internal certificate authority can execute on Windows Server 2022 member servers. The solution must allow rapid addition of new publishers without editing rules on every server, and must not rely on AppLocker path or hash rules. Which configuration satisfies the requirement? Option A. Deploy an AppLocker publisher rule via GPO that allows the internal CA certificate. Option B. Configure Windows Defender Application Control, WDAC, in audit mode first, then switch to enforced mode after validation. Option C. Create a base app control for business policy that trusts the internal CA, package it as a supplemental policy, and deploy via Intune or GPO. Option D. Use Microsoft Defender for Endpoint application control policies scoped to the server group. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is C. Create a base app control for business policy that trusts the internal CA, package it as a supplemental policy, and deploy via Intune or GPO. App Control for Business, the current name for WDAC, supports Certificate CA Trust in base plus supplemental policies. AppLocker is a separate legacy technology. The phrase "not rely on AppLocker path or hash rules" combined with internal certificate authority forces selection of App Control CA Trust policy. Question 4 of 40. A supplemental app control policy is merged with a base policy on several servers. After the merge, a signed internal application that should be allowed by the supplemental policy is blocked. Event logs indicate that the policy merge succeeded, but the application's signature is not recognized. Which diagnostic step isolates whether the supplemental policy is correctly referencing the base policy's signing requirements? Option A. Run get AppLocker policy-effective on the server and compare the output with the intended supplemental rules. Option B. Temporarily remove the supplemental policy, restart the server, and test the application under the base policy only. Option C. Use the App Control Policy Wizard in the Security Compliance Toolkit to regenerate the supplemental policy. Option D. Export both policies with Convert from CI policy. Compare the signing scenario sections and verify the supplemental policy inherits the base CA trust. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is D. Export both policies with Convert from CI policy, compare the signing scenario sections, and verify the supplemental policy inherits the base CA trust. App control policies are XML CI policy objects. Convert from CI policy allows inspection of signing scenarios and trust anchors to confirm merge behavior and CA inheritance. The failure mode, policy merge succeeded but signature not recognized, plus requirement to inspect inheritance points to Convert from CI policy on the XML definitions. Question 5 of 40. An administrator must protect domain-joined Windows Server 2022 servers so that derived credentials used for Kerberos authentication cannot be extracted by an attacker who has already obtained local administrator rights on the server. The solution must use virtualization-based security and must not require changes to existing service accounts that rely on unconstrained delegation. Which configuration meets the requirement? Option A. Enable Credential Guard via group policy under Computer Configuration, Administrative Templates, System, Device Guard. Option B. Enable LSA protection, run as PPL, and HVCI together on the servers. Option C. Configure Credential Guard with the Allow Delegation of Non-Exportable Credentials compatibility setting disabled. Option D. Enable Credential Guard and add the affected service accounts to the Protected Users group. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is A. Enable Credential Guard via group policy under Computer Configuration, Administrative Templates, System, Device Guard. Credential Guard isolates derived credentials using VBS. It is enabled through the Device Guard policy node and has explicit compatibility considerations for delegation scenarios. The combination of virtualization-based security plus Kerberos authentication plus explicit mention of unconstrained delegation compatibility requirement selects Credential Guard policy. Question 6 of 40. A Windows Server 2022 domain controller was recently updated to Windows Server 2025. After the update, domain users report that services using unconstrained delegation and NTLM authentication fail on member servers, while Kerberos works. You verify that LSA ISO.exe is running, and system information shows Credential Guard under virtualization-based security services running. Which configuration change most likely caused the breakage? Option A. Credential Guard was enabled with UEFI lock via group policy before the domain join. Option B. Credential Guard was left at its Windows Server 2025 default enablement state without explicit configuration. Option C. LSA CFG flags was set to 2, enabled without lock, in the registry after domain join. Option D. Device Guard policy was applied via Intune with enabled without lock after the first domain logon. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is B. Credential Guard was left at its Windows Server 2025 default enablement state without explicit configuration. Windows Server 2025 enables Credential Guard by default on capable hardware. Enabling it after domain join, or allowing the default, isolates derived credentials with VBS, breaking protocols that require reusable credentials such as unconstrained delegation and NTLM. The symptom matches the known compatibility boundary in the Credential Guard documentation. LSA ISO.exe running plus post-2025 update delegation failure points directly to default VBS isolation after domain join. Question 7 of 40. You are configuring a Windows Server 2022 file server that hosts an internal web application. The application downloads signed executables from an internal update server that has no public internet reputation. Users report that downloads are blocked even though the files pass code signing. Which Microsoft Defender SmartScreen setting must be adjusted to allow these internal downloads while keeping reputation checks for external content? Option A. Disable SmartScreen for Microsoft Edge only. Option B. Turn off SmartScreen entirely via the registry. Option C. Add the internal update server URL to the SmartScreen allow list in group policy. Option D. Enable SmartScreen but exclude the application folder from Defender Antivirus real-time protection. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is C. Add the internal update server URL to the SmartScreen allow list in group policy. SmartScreen performs reputation checks on sites, downloads, and apps. Internal servers without public reputation are blocked by default. The documented remediation is to add the URL to the SmartScreen allow list via policy, so reputation is bypassed only for that source. Internal signed executable with no public reputation plus need to keep external checks equals URL allow list in SmartScreen policy. Question 8 of 40. A signed internal line of business installer has no established public reputation. Microsoft Defender Antivirus scans the file and reports no malware, but Microsoft Defender SmartScreen still warns users before they run it. Which two statements correctly explain this result? Option A. SmartScreen evaluates reputation signals for sites, downloads, and applications independently of an antivirus malware verdict. Option B. A Defender antivirus exclusion, or clean scan, does not by itself create positive SmartScreen reputation for the installer. Option C. SmartScreen and Defender Antivirus use the same verdict engine, so a clean antivirus result should automatically suppress the warning. Option D. The SmartScreen warning proves that an application control for Windows policy explicitly denied the installer. Lock in your answer. The correct answers are A and B. Option A. SmartScreen evaluates reputation signals for sites, downloads, and applications, independently of an antivirus malware verdict. Option B. A Defender antivirus exclusion, or clean scan, does not by itself create positive SmartScreen reputation for the installer. SmartScreen is a reputation-based protection layer for sites, downloads, and applications. Defender antivirus malware scanning is a different control, so a clean scan or antivirus exclusion does not establish SmartScreen reputation. Application control is also a separate allow listing/enforcement control and cannot be inferred from a SmartScreen warning. Clean antivirus result plus a SmartScreen warning means reputation and malware scanning are separate decision layers. Question 9 of 40. You link a new GPO named Server Hardening containing security settings to an OU that contains 50 Windows Server 2022 member servers. After the next group policy refresh, only 12 servers show the new settings when you run gpresult/h. The remaining servers continue to show settings from the default domain policy. What is the most likely cause? Option A. The new GPO has lower precedence than the default domain policy. Option B. The servers have not performed a background refresh because the GPO change was made less than 90 minutes ago. Option C. Loopback processing is enabled on the default domain policy and is overriding the new GPO. Option D. Security filtering on the new GPO does not include the computer accounts of the 38 servers. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is D. Security filtering on the new GPO does not include the computer accounts of the 38 servers. When a GPO is linked, but security filtering excludes the target computer accounts, the policy does not apply, even though the link exists. Precedence, refresh interval, and loopback do not explain why only a subset of servers in the same OU receive the settings. Selective application to only 12 of 50 servers in the same OU equals security filtering problem. Question 10 of 40. A help desk technician edits the local security policy on a domain-joined Windows Server 2022 member server to increase the minimum password age setting. The change appears to take effect locally, yet domain users can still change passwords immediately. What is the root cause of the observed behavior? Option A. The local change is overridden by a domain-linked GPO with higher precedence during the next refresh. Option B. Local security policy edits on domain-joined machines are ignored for password policy settings. Option C. The minimum password age setting requires a domain functional level of 2016 or higher to be effective. Option D. The technician must use secpol.msc on a domain controller for the setting to propagate. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is A. The local change is overridden by a domain-linked GPO with higher precedence during the next refresh. On domain-joined computers, effective password policy is controlled by domain-linked GPOs, default domain policy, or FGPP. Local security policy changes for these settings are overwritten by domain policy at the next group policy refresh or logon. Domain-joined server plus local edit that does not survive refresh equals domain GPO precedence wins. Question 11 of 40. A security engineer must harden a new Windows Server 2025 member server that is domain joined. The requirement is to apply the official Microsoft Role-Aware Security Baseline with ongoing drift detection and automatic remediation, without importing or relying on existing group policy objects. Which action meets the requirement while following the documented OSConfig workflow? Option A. Import the Security Compliance Toolkit baseline XML into a new GPO and link it to the server's OU. Option B. Run install module microsoft.osconfig and then set OSConfig desired configuration with scenario security baseline /Windows Server /2025/member server. Option C. Enable the Windows Labs companion scenario and configure it via Intune CSP only. Option D. Apply the baseline through Azure Policy Machine Configuration Assignment targeting the server's resource group. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is B. Run install module microsoft.osconfig and then set OSConfig desired configuration with scenario security baseline / Windows Server / 2025 / member server. OSConfig is the native Windows Server 2025 mechanism that delivers role-specific baselines, member server scenario, with built-in drift control. The PowerShell module installation, followed by set OSConfig desired configuration, directly applies and maintains the baseline. The scenario explicitly requires drift detection plus remediation on a WS 2025 member server. Only the OSConfig module plus member server scenario satisfies both the role-aware baseline and the drift requirement. Question 12 of 40. After applying the OSConfig member server baseline on a Windows Server 2025 domain member, an administrator also configures several of the same security settings manually via the local security policy MMC. Subsequent get OSConfig desired configuration checks show repeated drift remediation events and settings flipping between values. What is the root cause and the correct remediation step? Option A. The server is not joined to a domain. Rerun the baseline after joining. Option B. The baseline was applied to the wrong role scenario. Switch to domain controller scenario. Option C. Conflicting configuration sources exist. Remove the duplicate settings from local security policy so OSConfig drift control can stabilize the baseline. Option D. OSConfig does not support simultaneous GPO and local settings. Delete the GPO link instead. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is C. Conflicting configuration sources exist. Remove the duplicate settings from local security policy so OSConfig drift control can stabilize the baseline. OSConfig documentation explicitly warns that when the same setting is managed by two sources, drift control will continuously remediate unless one source is removed. Local security policy edits create exactly this conflict. The symptom is repeated drift remediation events after dual configuration. The documented fix is to eliminate the duplicate management source. Question 13 of 40. An organization runs Windows Server 2022 domain controllers and Windows Server 2025 member servers that are Active Directory joined. The requirement is to automatically rotate and back up the local administrator password on the member servers only, storing the encrypted passwords in Active Directory, with fine-grained ACL permissions for retrieval by authorized help desk staff. Which configuration satisfies the requirement using the native Windows feature? Option A. Install the legacy Microsoft LAPS MSI on all member servers and configure the legacy GPO settings. Option B. Configure the LAPS CSP through Microsoft Intune, targeting only the member servers, and select Entra ID as the backup location. Option C. Apply the same LAPS policy to both domain controllers and member servers using a single domain GPO. Option D. Enable the Windows LAPS feature via the LAPS/Windows Server /2025 member server OSConfig companion scenario, and set the AD backup target with appropriate ACLs on the MS-MCS-ADM PID attribute. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is D. Enable the Windows LAPS feature via the LAPS/Windows Server /2025 member server OSConfig companion scenario, and set the AD backup target with appropriate ACLs on the MS-MCS-ADM WD attribute. Native Windows LAPS, not legacy, on WS 2025 supports AD backup with encrypted storage and ACL-controlled retrieval. The OSConfig companion scenario is the documented way to apply it on member servers. Legacy MSI is deprecated on supported OS versions. The scenario specifies AD-joined WS-2025 member servers, encrypted AD backup, and ACL permissions. Only native Windows Lapse with the OSConfig member server lapse scenario meets all constraints. Question 14 of 40. A Windows Server 2025 member server is hybrid, joined to Active Directory and Microsoft Entra ID. The security team wants native Windows Lapse to back up every rotated local administrator password to both directories at the same time. During policy design, the administrator finds that only one backup directory can be selected. Which Windows Lapse limitation explains this behavior? Option A. A hybrid joined device can back up its Windows Lapse password to either Active Directory or Microsoft Entra ID, but not to both simultaneously. Option B. Native Windows Lapse cannot run while a device is hybrid joined. The legacy Microsoft Lapse client must be installed instead. Option C. Microsoft Entra ID backup requires the Active Directory Lapse schema extension and the Lapse PowerShell module on every managed server. Option D. Dual directory backup is available only when the password retrieval account belongs to the protected users group. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is A. A hybrid joined device can back up its Windows Lapse password to either Active Directory or Microsoft Entra ID, but not to both simultaneously. Windows Lapse supports Active Directory backup and Microsoft Entra ID backup, but a device cannot use both backup directories at the same time. A hybrid joined device must be configured to use one target or the other. Hybrid does not mean dual backup. Windows Lapse uses either Active Directory or Microsoft Entra ID as the backup directory, not both. Question 15 of 40. A Windows Server 2025 domain controller must have its DSRM password automatically rotated and securely backed up to Active Directory. Which native Windows Lapse scenario and target combination is correct? Option A. Lapse/Windows Server/2025/member server scenario with Entra ID backup. Option B. Lapse/Windows Server/2025/domain controller or equivalent DSRM scenario with Active Directory backup. Option C. Security baseline/Windows Server/2025/domain controller scenario only. Lapse is not supported on DCs. Option D. Legacy Microsoft Lapse MSI with the DSRM GPO setting pointing to the PDC emulator. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is B. Lapse/Windows Server/2025/domain controller, or equivalent DSRM scenario with Active Directory backup. Windows Lapse explicitly supports backing up the DSRM password on domain controllers to Active Directory. The role-aware or DSRM-specific scenario is required. Entra ID backup and legacy MSI are not applicable here. The scenario specifies a domain controller and DSRM password. Only the native Lapse AD backup path for DCs satisfies the requirement. Question 16 of 40. A security engineer is tasked with protecting a fleet of Windows Server 2022 machines that run both in Azure and on-premises. The requirement is to enable real-time threat protection, vulnerability assessment, and automatic onboarding to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint without installing the legacy log analytics agent. Which Defender for Cloud plan meets the requirement with the least operational overhead? Option A. Enable only the Foundational Cloud Security Posture Management (CSPM) plan. Option B. Enable Defender for Servers Plan 2 at the subscription level. Option C. Enable Defender for Servers Plan 1 at the subscription level. Option D. Deploy Microsoft Defender for Endpoint standalone and configure Azure Arc for each server. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is C. Enable Defender for Servers Plan 1 at the subscription level. Defender for Servers Plan 1 provides the core EDR integration with Defender for Endpoint, vulnerability scanning, and threat detection for servers. Plan 2 adds agentless scanning and additional capabilities that are not required by the stated minimum requirements. The combination of real-time threat protection, vulnerability assessment, automatic onboarding to Defender for Endpoint, and without legacy log analytics agent directly maps to the documented capabilities of Defender for Servers Plan 1. Question 17 of 40. After enabling Defender for Servers Plan 1 on an Azure subscription that contains both Azure VMs and Azure Arc-enabled on-premises servers, an administrator observes that several on-premises servers show the status not protected in Defender for Cloud, even though the Azure Arc agent reports healthy connectivity. The Defender for Endpoint sensor is confirmed installed. Which single action most likely resolves the protection gap? Option A. Rerun the Azure Connected Machine agent installer with the -- Defender for Servers flag. Option B. Assign the Azure Arc-enabled servers to a new resource group that has Defender for Servers explicitly enabled. Option C. Manually install the Microsoft Monitoring Agent on the on-premises servers. Option D. Enable the Defender for Servers Plan 1 resource level toggle on each affected Arc server. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is D. Enable the Defender for Servers Plan 1 resource level toggle on each affected Arc server. Plan 1 supports per resource enable-disable, when the plan is enabled only at subscription scope. Individual Arc servers may still require explicit resource-level enablement to receive protection status in Defender for Cloud. The phrase on-premises servers show not protected, combined with healthy Arc connectivity and Defender for Endpoint already installed, points to the Plan 1 resource-level enablement requirement documented for Arc machines. Question 18 of 40. An organization is evaluating Defender for Servers for a mixed environment of Azure VMs and on-premises servers. The security team requires both EDR capabilities and agentless vulnerability scanning, while keeping operational overhead low. Which two statements correctly describe the capabilities that satisfy the requirements? Choose 2. Option A. Defender for Servers Plan 1 automatically onboards servers to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and provides EDR alerts. Option B. Both Plan 1 and Plan 2 require the legacy log analytics agent for full threat detection on Windows Server. Option C. Defender for Servers Plan 2 enables agentless scanning for software inventory, vulnerabilities, secrets, and malware. Option D. Agentless scanning is available only when servers are connected through Azure Arc, and Defender for Servers Plan 2 is enabled. Lock in your answer. The correct answers are A and C. Option A. Defender for Servers Plan 1 automatically onboards servers to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and provides EDR alerts. Option C. Defender for Servers Plan 2 enables agentless scanning for software inventory, vulnerabilities, secrets, and malware. Plan 1 delivers the Defender for Endpoint EDR integration. Plan 2 adds the documented agentless scanning capabilities. Both plans have replaced the legacy agent with the current integration model. The requirement for both EDR capabilities and agentless vulnerability scanning maps directly to the two-plan distinction and the no longer supports log analytics agent note in the official overview. Question 19 of 40. An administrator must allow inbound SMB traffic on TCP port 445 from a specific management subnet to a group of file servers, while ensuring that all other inbound traffic remains blocked. The solution must be centrally managed via group policy and must not rely on IPsec authentication. Which configuration satisfies the requirement? Option A. Create an inbound firewall rule that allows TCP 445 from the management subnet source address and assign it via GPO. Option B. Create a connection security rule that requires IPsec authentication for TCP 445 and assign it to the file servers. Option C. Create an outbound firewall rule on the clients that permits TCP 445 to the file servers. Option D. Enable the predefined file and printer sharing rule group and restrict it with a WMI filter for the management subnet. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is A. Create an inbound firewall rule that allows TCP 445 from the management subnet source address and assign it via GPO. Firewall rules, inbound allow, directly control which traffic is permitted. Connection security rules only negotiate IPsec and do not independently permit traffic. The phrase allow inbound SMB traffic plus not rely on IPsec authentication signals the need for a classic inbound firewall allow rule rather than a connection security rule. Question 20 of 40. A security architect configures Windows Defender Firewall on domain-joined servers so that a line of business application can communicate securely with clients on a trusted subnet. The architect creates a connection security rule requiring IPsec authentication and integrity for the application's port. After deployment, clients on the trusted subnet report that the application cannot connect, even though a matching inbound firewall rule exists. Which statement explains the most likely root cause? Option A. Connection security rules automatically create the required allow rules. The explicit inbound firewall rule is redundant and should be removed. Option B. The connection security rule is evaluated before the firewall rule. Because authentication fails for unauthenticated clients, the traffic is dropped regardless of the allow rule. Option C. The inbound firewall rule must be changed to an outbound rule on the server to permit return traffic for IPsec protected sessions. Option D. IPsec connection security rules only apply to the domain profile. The servers are receiving the public profile and therefore ignore the rule. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is B. The connection security rule is evaluated before the firewall rule. Because authentication fails for unauthenticated clients, the traffic is dropped regardless of the allow rule. Connection security rules enforce authentication requirements. Unauthenticated traffic matching the rule is blocked, even if a separate firewall allow rule exists. Firewall rules filter traffic. Connection security rules negotiate protection. The scenario explicitly states a matching inbound firewall rule exists, yet traffic fails, which isolates the issue to the independent enforcement behavior of connection security rules versus firewall rules. Question 21 of 40. A domain administrator must apply stricter password and account lockout settings to members of a new Tier 0 admins global security group without affecting other users in the contoso.com domain. The domain functional level is Windows Server 2022. Which action creates and applies the required policy? Option A. Edit the default domain policy GPO and raise the password length and lockout threshold values. Option B. Create a new group policy object linked at the domain level that configures the password policy settings under Computer Configuration, Policies, Windows Settings, Security Settings, Account Policies. Option C. Create a new password settings object in the password settings container using Active Directory Administrative Center and assign it directly to the Tier 0 admins group with precedence 10. Option D. Use the set AD default domain password policy commandlet to target only the Tier 0 admins group. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is C. Create a new password settings object in the password settings container using Active Directory Administrative Center and assign it directly to the Tier 0 admins group with precedence 10. Fine-grained password policies, password settings objects, are created in the password settings container and can be applied directly to global security groups or users. They take precedence over the default domain policy when precedence is set lower. The domain functional level requirement is met. The phrase stricter to members of a new Tier 0 admin's global security group combined with domain functional level points directly to FGPP creation and group assignment rather than default domain or GPO. Question 22 of 40. Two fine-grained password policies exist. PSO1, precedence 10, applied to Tier 0 admins, and PSO2, precedence 20, applied to a broader all admins group that contains Tier 0 admins. A user who is a member of both groups changes their password. Which policy is enforced and why? Option A. PSO2 is enforced because it was created first and has broader membership. Option B. The default domain policy is enforced because FGPP precedence only applies when policies are not nested. Option C. Both policies are merged. The strictest setting from each policy wins. Option D. PSO1 is enforced because it has the lowest precedence value among policies that apply to the user. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is D. PSO1 is enforced because it has the lowest precedence value among policies that apply to the user. When multiple FGPPs apply to a user, the policy with the lowest precedence value, highest priority, wins. The claim boundary emphasizes different scope and precedence between default and FGPP. The combination of two overlapping FGPPs with explicit precedence numbers and the question which policy is enforced signals the lowest precedence wins rule. Question 23 of 40. An organization wants to block common weak passwords, e.g. company sports team names, for all on-premises ADDS users, while keeping the existing default domain password policy intact. The solution must support both a global banned list and custom banned passwords. Which deployment step is required first? Option A. Install the Microsoft Entra Password Protection DC agent on all domain controllers and the proxy service on a member server. Option B. Create a new group policy setting under Account Policies that references the banned password list. Option C. Enable the feature directly in the default domain policy using the Entra ID connector. Option D. Run the Enable Azure AD Password Protection commandlet on the PDC emulator. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is A. Install the Microsoft Entra Password Protection DC agent on all domain controllers and the proxy service on a member server. Microsoft Entra Password Protection for ADDS requires the proxy service and DC agents to be installed and registered before the feature can be enabled in the Entra Admin Center. It evaluates against global plus custom banned lists without replacing domain password policy. The requirement to keep the existing default domain password policy intact while adding banned password evaluation points to the separate Entra Password Protection agent/proxy architecture. Question 24 of 40. After deploying Microsoft Entra Password Protection agents and enabling the feature in audit mode, password change attempts using banned passwords are logged but still succeed. The administrator now wants to block those attempts. Which action achieves enforcement without reinstalling agents? Option A. Edit the registry key on each DC agent to switch from audit mode = 1 to enforced = 1. Option B. Change the mode from audit to enforced in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center under Authentication Methods, Password Protection. Option C. Create an authentication policy silo that references the banned password list and assign it to all users. Option D. Increase the precedence of the default domain policy so it overrides the Entra agents. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is B. Change the mode from audit to enforced in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center under Authentication Methods, password protection. The mode, audit versus enforced, is controlled centrally in the Entra Admin Center. Switching to enforced makes the agents reject banned passwords while the agents remain in place. It does not replace or interact with authentication policy silos for this purpose. The scenario starts in audit mode with successful banned attempts and asks for enforcement change without touching agents. The central mode toggle is the only documented path. Question 25 of 40. A security team wants to protect highly privileged accounts against credential theft by preventing plaintext credential caching on domain-joined Windows Server 2022 hosts. The domain functional level is Windows Server 2022. Which configuration provides the required non-configurable protections? Option A. Create an authentication policy silo. Link an authentication policy that disables NTLM and assign the silo to the accounts. Option B. Enable Credential Guard via group policy on all domain controllers. Option C. Add the accounts to the protected user's global security group. Option D. Place the accounts in a new global security group and apply a GPO that sets the Do Not Allow Storage of Passwords and Credentials setting. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is C. Add the accounts to the protected user's global security group. Membership in the protected users group automatically applies multiple non-configurable protections, including no plaintext credential caching for Cred SSP, Digest, and Kerberos AES-only requirements. It is distinct from general privilege group membership or silo configuration. The requirement for non-configurable protections against credential caching on hosts, combined with domain functional level, directly identifies the protected user's security group rather than silos or GPOs. Question 26 of 40. A service account used by a line of business application must authenticate to multiple servers using Kerberos delegation. After the account is added to the protected user security group to increase its protection level, delegation stops working and authentication fails with protocol errors. Which statement correctly identifies the root cause without violating the objective boundary of managing protected users? Option A. The account lost its SPN registration. Re-register the SPN and move the account out of protected users. Option B. Protected users forces NTLM authentication only, breaking any delegation scenario. Option C. Protected users blocks unconstrained delegation and NTLM, while allowing constrained delegation only when the account is also marked as sensitive and cannot be delegated. Option D. Protected users disables all forms of Kerberos delegation, including constrained and resource-based constrained delegation, RBCD. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is D. Protected users disables all forms of Kerberos delegation, including constrained and resource-based constrained delegation, RBCD. Membership in protected users imposes strict authentication restrictions, including blocking of unconstrained delegation, NTLM, and certain delegation scenarios. The boundary is that this objective covers the protected user's group effects, not the separate configuration of constrained delegation or RBCD, which fall under Manage AD delegation. The scenario names both protected users and delegation stops working while requiring the boundary with RBCD/constrained delegation to be respected. Question 27 of 40. An organization is hardening newly provisioned domain controllers for a new ADDS forest. The requirements are to minimize the attack surface, ensure only required roles run, and enable centralized monitoring without installing additional server roles or exposing the DCs to the internet. Which single configuration step aligns directly with the hardened domain controller's objective? Option A. Place the domain controllers in a dedicated OU, apply a security baseline GPO that removes unnecessary features and services, and configure advanced audit policy for directory service access. Option B. Install Microsoft Entra Connect on the domain controllers and enable health monitoring agents. Option C. Enable the domain controller allow server operators to schedule tasks security option and restrict interactive logons via user rights assignment. Option D. Configure resource-based constrained delegation, RBCD, on all member servers pointing back to the DCs. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is A. Place the domain controllers in a dedicated OU. Apply a security baseline GPO that removes unnecessary features and services, and configure advanced audit policy for directory service access. Hardening DCs focuses on isolation via OU GPO baselines, minimal role/services, and auditing. Enter Connect Health and RBCD are outside this objective boundary, hybrid identity health and delegation management, respectively. The STEM emphasizes minimize attack surface, plus only required roles, plus centralized monitoring, while naming the objective boundary for auditing. Question 28 of 40. After applying a hardening baseline to domain controllers, the security team must verify that two specific controls are in place to protect against lateral movement and credential theft. The controls must not rely on third-party agents or hybrid cloud services. Which two controls satisfy the requirements while staying inside the hardened domain controller's objective? Option A. Remove all non-essential server roles and features using Server Manager or PowerShell and block outbound internet access at the firewall. Option B. Configure Microsoft Entra Connect health alerts for DC synchronization issues. Option C. Set the account is sensitive and cannot be delegated flag on all service accounts in the domain. Option D. Implement AD-DS advanced auditing for directory service changes and directory service access events. Lock in your answer. The correct answers are A and D. Option A. Remove all non-essential server roles and features using Server Manager or PowerShell and block outbound internet access at the firewall. Option D. Implement AD-DS advanced auditing for directory service changes and directory service access events. Hardening includes minimizing installed components plus enabling native AD-DS auditing. Entra Connect Health is hybrid. Credential Guard on DCs has compatibility notes but is secondary. Delegation flag is under different objective. The STEM requires exactly two controls, native only, and explicitly excludes hybrid services and delegation flags. Question 29 of 40. A new domain controller must be deployed such that only designated Tier 0 administrators can interactively log on locally or via RDP, while domain members can still authenticate for directory queries. The solution must be enforced centrally and auditable. Which configuration meets the restrict access to domain controllers objective? Option A. Add the Tier 0 admins to the domain admins group and enable allow logon locally only for that group via GPO. Option B. Use the deny logon locally and deny logon through remote desktop services user rights assignments in a GPO linked to the domain controller's OU, while ensuring access this computer from the network remains enabled for authenticated users. Option C. Configure a Windows firewall rule on the DCs that allows only specific IP addresses for RDP and SMB. Option D. Enable Microsoft Entra Connect Health Agent with conditional access policies restricting DC access. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is B. Use the deny log on locally and deny log on through remote desktop services user rights assignments in a GPO linked to the domain controller's OU, while ensuring access this computer from the network remains enabled for authenticated users. Restricting access to DCs centers on user rights assignment policies, logon rights, scoped to the DC's OU. Firewall is supplementary. Entra Connect Health is hybrid, and domain admins already have rights by default. The STEM distinguishes interactive/RDP logon rights from network authentication and excludes hybrid solutions. Question 30 of 40. After restricting logon rights on domain controllers, a monitoring solution reports that a previously authorized help desk account can still perform certain directory operations from a member server. Investigation shows the operations use network logons rather than interactive logons. Which statement correctly explains the boundary between restrict access controls and related delegation/auditing features? Option A. Resource-based constrained delegation, RBCD, on the DCs is allowing the operations. Remove the RBCD configuration. Option B. ADDS auditing events for log-on, log-off were not enabled, so the monitoring solution cannot distinguish the access type. Option C. The access this computer from the network right must also be denied. The current restriction only blocked interactive logons and did not address network authentication paths. Option D. Microsoft Entra Connect Health is reporting false positives because the hybrid sync account bypasses on-premises restrictions. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is C. The access this computer from the network right must also be denied. The current restriction only blocked interactive logons and did not address network authentication paths. Restrict access includes both interactive and network logon rights. Delegation, RBCD, and hybrid health monitoring are separate objectives. Auditing is diagnostic, but the root control is the rights assignment itself. The STEM highlights the distinction between interactive versus network logon rights and explicitly calls out boundaries with RBCD, auditing, and Intra-Connect Health. Question 31 of 40. A security administrator must configure settings so that members of the finance department can only authenticate from domain-joined workstations in the Finance OU and cannot use NTLM authentication. The solution must apply to user accounts without modifying the default domain policy. Which configuration meets the requirement? Option A. Create a new password settings object, PSO, and link it to the finance group. Option B. Enable the Network Security Restrict NTLM policy in the default domain GPO. Option C. Configure a logon workstation restriction on each finance user account object. Option D. Place the finance user accounts in the protected users group and configure an authentication policy silo with NTLM restrictions. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is D. Place the finance user accounts in the protected users group and configure an authentication policy silo with NTLM restrictions. Protected users group, combined with authentication policy silos, enforces Kerberos-only authentication and workstation restrictions at the account level without relying on default domain policy or per-user workstation lists. The combination of Finance Department plus domain-joined workstations in the Finance OU plus cannot use NTLM points directly to protected users plus authentication policy silo. Question 32 of 40. After placing several service accounts into the protected users group, a monitoring alert indicates that one service account can no longer authenticate to a legacy application that requires NTLM. The application server is not domain-joined. Which diagnostic step identifies the exact cause while preserving the security posture for other accounts? Option A. Create a test authentication policy that excludes the service account and apply it to a new silo for validation. Option B. Temporarily remove the service account from protected users and test authentication. Option C. Review the security event log on the domain controller for Kerberos pre-authentication failures related to the account. Option D. Run nltest/dclist and check for NTLM downgrade events in the application event log. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is A. Create a test authentication policy that excludes the service account and apply it to a new silo for validation. Authentication policy silos allow targeted exclusion testing without removing accounts from protected users, preserving the intended security configuration for production accounts. Service account plus legacy application plus not domain joined plus requirement to preserve posture signals the need for a targeted authentication policy silo test. Question 33 of 40. An organization wants to prevent members of the built-in domain admins group from authenticating to member servers using NTLM, while still allowing Kerberos. The change must not affect other privileged groups or require changes to individual user objects. Which action satisfies the requirement? Option A. Add the domain admins group to the protected users security group. Option B. Create an authentication policy that denies NTLM for the domain admins group and link it via silo. Option C. Configure the network security, do not store LAN manager hash value on next password change policy. Option D. Use group policy to restrict logon to domain admins on member servers via user rights assignment. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is B. Create an authentication policy that denies NTLM for the domain admins group and link it via silo. Authentication policies and silos provide protocol-level restrictions, NTLM versus Kerberos, targeted at specific groups without the broad effects of protected users' membership or user rights changes. Built-in domain admins plus NTLM, while still allowing Kerberos, plus not affect other privileged groups, identifies authentication policy silo targeting. Question 34 of 40. After configuring an authentication policy silo for enterprise admins that blocks NTLM, a help desk ticket reports that a newly promoted enterprise admin cannot manage a legacy application server that only supports NTLM. The server is in a restricted network segment. Which remediation preserves the silo policy while resolving access? Option A. Remove the account from enterprise admins and grant delegated rights instead. Option B. Create a separate authentication policy silo for service accounts that permits NTLM and move the account into it. Option C. Add an exception rule in the authentication policy for the specific server IP address. Option D. Disable the silo policy temporarily, update the legacy server, then re-enable the policy. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is C. Add an exception rule in the authentication policy for the specific server IP address. Authentication policies support targeted exceptions, for example by resource or IP, that allow specific legacy access without weakening the overall group restriction or moving accounts between silos. Newly promoted enterprise admin plus legacy application server plus restricted network segment plus preserve silo signals IP-based exception in the policy. Question 35 of 40. A junior administrator must be granted the ability to reset passwords and unlock accounts only for users in the sales OU. The solution must use the least privilege delegation model and must not grant any rights outside the sales OU. Which tool and method should be used? Option A. Add the junior administrator to the account operator's built-in group and restrict the group to the sales OU via GPO. Option B. Manually edit the ACL on the sales OU using Active Directory users and computers advanced security settings. Option C. Create a custom PowerShell script that runs with domain admin credentials and delegates the tasks via set AD permission. Option D. Use the delegation of control wizard on the sales OU and select the reset user passwords and force password change at next logon and unlock locked user accounts tasks. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is D. Use the delegation of control wizard on the sales OU and select the reset user passwords and force password change at next logon and unlock locked user accounts tasks. The delegation of control wizard applies granular OU scoped permissions for the exact tasks required, without granting broader rights or requiring manual ACL editing. Sales OU plus reset passwords and unlock accounts plus least privilege plus not grant any rights outside directly matches the delegation of control wizard tasks. Question 36 of 40. An administrator runs the delegation of control wizard on an OU containing service accounts and grants a help desk group permission to reset passwords and manage group membership. Later, a service account in that OU fails to obtain a Kerberos service ticket for a back-end resource that requires constrained delegation. Which diagnosis correctly identifies the root cause while respecting the boundary between ACL-based delegation and Kerberos service delegation? Option A. The delegation of control wizard only modified ACLs on directory objects. It has no effect on Kerberos delegation settings such as MSDS allowed to delegate to, or the account's trust this computer for delegation flag. Option B. The help desk group membership change automatically revoked the service account's Kerberos delegation rights because service accounts cannot be in delegated OUs. Option C. Password reset permission from the wizard forces the service account into protected users, which blocks all delegation types, including constrained delegation. Option D. The wizard must be rerun with the Kerberos constrained delegation custom task selected to restore the required service ticket behavior. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is A. The delegation of control wizard only modified ACLs on directory objects. It has no effect on Kerberos delegation settings, such as MSDS allowed to delegate to, or the account's trust this computer for delegation flag. Delegation of control wizard configures ACL permissions on OUs and objects for administrative tasks, reset passwords, manage groups. It is distinct from Kerberos delegation configuration, service account properties, or RBCD. The failure is unrelated to the ACL changes performed by the wizard. The stem explicitly names delegation of control wizard and Kerberos service ticket, while requiring distinction between ACL delegation and Kerberos delegation. Question 37 of 40. A tiered administration model requires that OU admins in the finance department can only reset passwords for user accounts in their OU and cannot modify computer objects or GPO links. Which single action implements the required delegation without granting broader rights? Option A. Add the finance admins group to domain admins and then remove the group from all other OUs via security filtering. Option B. Run the delegation of control wizard on the finance OU, select the finance admins group, and delegate only the reset user passwords and force password change at next logon task. Option C. Create an authentication policy silo containing the finance OUs and apply a policy restricting password resets to that silo only. Option D. Enable Microsoft Entra Connect health agents on the domain controllers and configure alerts for unauthorized delegation changes. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is B. Run the delegation of control wizard on the finance OU. Select the finance admins group and delegate only the reset user passwords and force password change at next logon task. The delegation of control wizard allows granular task delegation, password reset, scoped to a specific OU. Adding to domain admins is overprivileged. Authentication policy silos control sign-in restrictions, not admin delegation tasks. Entra Connect Health is a hybrid monitoring feature, unrelated to on-premises delegation configuration. The stem specifies OU admins plus only reset passwords plus finance OU, while naming the exact wizard task and excluding hybrid or silo features. Question 38 of 40. An organization must protect high-value service accounts so they can authenticate only from specific domain joined servers, and must enforce shorter, non-renewable Kerberos TGT lifetimes for privileged user accounts. Which two configuration steps achieve these requirements while staying inside the managed authentication protocols and methods for ADDS objective? Option A. Install Microsoft Entra Connect Health agents on all domain controllers and enable alerts for authentication protocol downgrade attempts. Option B. Create an authentication policy silo, assign the service accounts as members, and configure the service authentication policy with allowed to authentication from conditions and a reduced service TGT lifetime. Option C, create an authentication policy. Assign it to the privileged users via an authentication policy silo, set a short, non-renewable user TGT lifetime, and configure allowed to authenticate from device conditions. Option D, add the service accounts and privileged users to the protected user security group and rely on its default NTLM rejection and delegation blocks. Lock in your answer. The correct answers are B and C. Option B, create an authentication policy silo, assign the service accounts as members, and configure the service authentication policy with allowed to authentication from conditions and a reduced service TGT lifetime. Option C, create an authentication policy, assign it to the privileged users via an authentication policy silo, set a short, non-renewable user TGT lifetime, and configure allowed to authentication from device conditions. Authentication policy silos plus policies provide configurable control over TGT lifetimes, non-renewable, and allowed to authorize from or to conditions for users, computers, and services. Interconnect Health is hybrid-only monitoring. Protected Users applies fixed protections, no NTLM, no delegation, but does not allow per-silo TGT lifetime tuning or fine-grained device conditions for services. The STEM names Authentication Policy Silo, implicitly via requirements for service accounts plus TGT lifetimes plus allowed to authentication conditions, while requiring exactly 2 steps and excluding hybrid agents. Question 39 of 40. After creating authentication policy silos for administrators and assigning policies, domain controllers begin logging authentication failures for service accounts that previously worked. The service accounts are not members of protected users. Investigation shows failures occur only when the services attempt to authenticate from non-domain controller hosts. Which root cause diagnosis is most accurate? Option A. Microsoft Entra Connect Health agents detected a protocol mismatch and raised an alert that blocked the service accounts until resolved. Option B. The silos automatically place the service accounts into protected users upon policy assignment, triggering the default NTLM and delegation blocks. Option C. The authentication policy silo for services has an MS-DS service allowed to allocate from condition that does not include the non-DC hosts, and the policy is enforced rather than in audit mode. Option D. Authentication policy silos only apply to user accounts. Service accounts require separate Kerberos-constrained delegation configuration on the target SPNs. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is C. The authentication policy silo for services has an MS-DS service allowed to authenticate from condition that does not include the non-DC hosts, and the policy is enforced rather than in audit mode. Authentication policies in silos can restrict MS-DS service allowed to authenticate from for service accounts. When enforced, non-matching hosts cause authentication failure at the AS-TGS exchange. Interconnect Health does not block on-prem auth. Silos apply to service accounts. Protected users is a separate group assignment. The STEM highlights service accounts plus non-domain controller hosts plus not protected users plus silo/policy creation while requiring the exact attribute and enforcement state. Question 40 of 40. A security baseline requires that privileged user accounts obtain Kerberos tickets only from domain controllers, and that TGTs are non-renewable with a maximum 2-hour lifetime. Which single configuration meets both requirements inside the Manage Authentication Protocols and Methods for AD-DS objective? Option A. Add the accounts to protected users and configure a group policy setting to enforce 2-hour Kerberos ticket lifetimes domain-wide. Option B. Install the Microsoft Entra Connect Health agent on a domain controller and create a custom alert rule for TGT lifetime violations. Option C. Use the Delegation of Control wizard to delegate Kerberos ticket management rights to a monitoring group, and set the TGT lifetime via the wizard. Option D. Create an authentication policy silo for privileged users. Assign the accounts. Apply a user authentication policy with allowed to authenticate from limited to domain controllers and a 7,200-second non-renewable user TGT lifetime. Lock in your answer. The correct answer is D. Create an authentication policy silo for privileged users. Assign the accounts, apply a user authentication policy with allowed to authentication from limited to domain controllers, and a 7,200-second non-renewable user TGT lifetime. Authentication policy silos support per silo user authentication policy with MSDS user allowed to authentication from conditions and configurable non-renewable user TGT lifetime. Protected users applies fixed, non-configurable per silo restrictions. Ensure Connect Health is hybrid monitoring only. The Delegation of Control wizard does not manage Kerberos TGT settings. The stem requires authentication policy silo plus allowed to authenticate from plus non-renewable TGT lifetime, while explicitly naming the objective boundary and excluding GPO, protected users defaults, hybrid agents, and the wizard. You finished the Windows Server Security Deep Dive. Sort any misses into 6 boundaries: operating system protection, application and reputation control, credential isolation, policy and baseline enforcement, privileged account scope or delegation, and authentication restrictions. Replay only the patterns you missed to build a precise remediation plan. Thanks for practicing with WebLizard CertLab. Keep protection layers, policy scope, privileged identities, delegation paths, and authentication boundaries in view. Then continue with the next AZ-802 deep dive when you are ready.